All right, guys, let's take a quick look at the exclusive buyer's brokerage agreement. There is also a non-exclusive buyer's brokerage agreement that you may use, very similar to this, going to have the same fields. The exclusive is when they're only committing to work with you. When they buy a house, you're who they're going to use. You're the one that's going to be paid. You're going to be the one that's giving them the advice. The non-exclusive you might use with an investor where they're working with you in a certain area. They're maybe pursuing finding properties on their own that they're going to buy directly from the seller, but they want your help in finding properties as well. But this exclusive one is the one that we prefer to be using, the one that we hope you'll be using a lot. Okay, it's one of the simplest forms we have. Walking through, we're going to start out with the definition that this is the exclusive buyer's brokerage agreement, that everyone is entering into this agreement, and it shall begin. Most likely that's going to be today's date, okay, and shall continue through the date of, well, when's it going to expire? How long do you anticipate it taking to find the right property for them? How long are they willing to work with you? So I have no problems with you signing a buyer's brokerage agreement for a week, a month, 3 months, or a year. Typically, I'm going to be looking for, if it were me, I'm going to be looking for a 3 to 4 month commitment, especially in a difficult market like we have today, with it being a heavy seller's market and taking our buyers a little longer to find a property. So start today and end that in 4 months, and that should give you adequate time to find the right property. But if they're ever hesitant about signing a buyer's brokerage agreement, sign a short one. Sign one for 2 weeks and let them know, hey, just asking you for a 2-week commitment. At the end of 2 weeks, you think I've done a great job working for you. If we haven't found the right home, we'll sign another one. But that way you're not tied into a long-term commitment. Some people feel they've had a bad experience in the past. But if they're wanting to go out and look at properties, you want to have this in place before you go looking at properties. Okay. So we've got term covered, paragraph 3, agency and brokerage. And the common mistake that I see is we're signing the buyer's brokerage agreement, and agents will come down here and mark buyer's agency. That's not what this says. It says the following types of agency relationships not offered by the broker. So you need to mark dual agency and sub-agency. Those are the 2 types of brokerage we do not offer. Okay, and since we don't offer dual agency, there's no reason for the buyer to consent to it. So go ahead and by default, just mark buyer does not consent to broker acting in a dual agency capacity. And we're done with that. Paragraph 4, and even more than ever, this is a really important paragraph. Typically in Georgia, commissions are paid by the seller, and we as agents have historically known, just because the property was in MLS, what the commission was. But in today's tight market, we are seeing more and more sellers offering to a co-op commission of $1, 0, 1%, some reduced amount, because there are plenty of buyers out there that are willing to pay their own commission. So this is where that commission gets defined. Buyer agrees the broker shall be entitled to the following commission at the closing of the contract. Well, historically, we want to see the first one marked and get a 3% commission. That is kind of par for the course, but it's whatever commission you negotiate, be it a flat fee or a percentage. But 3% is what I would recommend putting in there. Then in paragraph B, in the event the seller does not pay the broker the full amount of the commission, so if the listing broker is not paying, if the seller is not paying you the full commission, buyer shall or shall not pay the broker the difference at closing between the broker's commission and the commission actually paid to the broker. This should always be buyer shall. Otherwise, you may find yourself being in a contractual agreement with a buyer that you have agreed to represent them and help them buy the home for whatever the seller is offering, okay? And they don't have to make up the difference. And if the seller is offering 0, well, you signed a contract that said you would represent them for 0, okay? We want that the buyer shall pay the difference, so that if the seller's offering 0, the buyer's going to have to pay it, okay? Separate commission on lease. Hopefully, if someone's signing a buyer's brokerage agreement, we're confident that we're going to be buying and not leasing. But if we run out of time to buy, if we find out that they are unable to buy, or if they just make the decision that they prefer to lease, we can go ahead and define in here how we're going to get paid. My preference would be that if the decision's made that they're going to lease, that we sign a tenant brokerage agreement. But we can go ahead and put in here a certain dollar amount and as follows. And that as follows is typically upon execution of lease agreement or upon move-in. They're asking for the timeline. When is it going to get paid? Okay. Common commissions right now on leases are $300. That's what we see offered most of the time. But again, all commissions are negotiated. So whatever amount you can negotiate, that's what we're going to put in there. Paragraph 6, the length of the protected period. I recommend 90 days in here. That's the time period where after our brokerage agreement expires, that buyer, if they enter into an agreement on a property that we showed them, where we were the procuring agent, okay, they're still going to have to pay us if they enter into that contract within 90 days. Okay, that way they can't just make the decision, hey, my contract with my agent ends on Friday. Let's wait till Friday, and then we can write an agreement without the agent involved. Okay, no, there would still be a 90-day protected period in there. Section B. These are just all the explanations, the details around the things we filled out on the first page. There is nothing to fill out in here, but plenty to understand. Okay, and right here in C is 2 things that I wanted to draw your attention to. It's what are the broker's responsibilities to the buyer, and what are the buyer's responsibilities to the broker. Okay. Go through these pages, even though there's nothing to fill out. Read and highlight these paragraphs. Make sure you understand what is in here. So when your client asks you a question about any of this, you have full understanding and are prepared for those questions. If we're going to be giving them any brochures, we can mark them here. No requirement that we give them any. But there are certain documents that I think are a good idea for buyers to have. One of those is the ABCs of agency, so they understand what they're signing, what it means for an agent to represent them as a client versus a customer, and protect yourself from buying real property. Those are the 2 that could probably be handed out with every transaction, and there's going to be value there. But depending on what property we're looking at, there may be others that are relevant that they may want. But if I were to send all of these by default to my client, they're probably not going to read those 300 pages. So pick and choose the ones that are most important to them. If there's anything special that needs to be added, anything that's not already covered in the conversation, we do have a special stipulations section. This is probably not very commonly filled out on a buyer's brokerage agreement, but if this were a unique situation where we needed to add some language, that's where it would be. Then we have our buyer's information. This is the signature page, the last page of the buyer's brokerage agreement. We need all of your client's information in here, because remember, this is an agreement between the broker and the buyer. Okay, you're the broker's affiliated licensee, but the agreement's between the buyer and the broker. And just in case something happens and you disappear or you're unreachable, we're still responsible for that client. So we need to know how to get hold of them. So we need all of their information filled in here: their name, their address, their phone number, and their email. And then we have all of our broker information. And you need to fill all of this out on both sides. The only thing I encourage you not to put in here is a fax number. And you can leave that blank or X that out. Most people do not use a fax. And we certainly are not policing a fax to make sure we know if anything comes in. Once everybody's signed, we can fill out our acknowledgement box down here, just indicating that everyone has signed and everyone has a copy. And that's it for the exclusive buyer's brokerage agreement. If you have any questions, call me, text me, email me. Glad to help.